as a 22-year-old, you enter the Protea setup. You're the captain of the team. We just finished the World Cup in 2003 in South Africa. Obviously that didn't end the way we wanted to. I mean, explain to us what kind of pressure goes through kind of your mind when you get that responsibility, because I mean, both of us were captains as well, and I think it's something that you don't really say no to, but getting it later in your career is much easier than getting it straight from the start and all the responsibility that goes with it.
I mean, as you talk about it, I can feel the nerves come back into the tension build a little bit. I mean, I remember driving up Constantia Neck when I got the call, and I actually, we know how tight that road is. I managed to find somewhere to pull over and sort of think about it as I chatted to Gerald Majula. I think it was post that. At the time, you're in it and you're a little bit excited and you don't really consider the nerves. You do your first press conference, but then all of a sudden you're 22 and you start getting all this pressure. People doubting you. Every newspaper, every ex-player, every journalist is writing an article of 22. Can you cope? Can you handle it? And your first massive tours to England as well, where you're taking on all those journos in the UK, the crowds. And so I think you I can remember back to having those emotions and nerves consistently, and you're always fighting a little bit of that self-doubt. So I think the one thing that I had as a strength back then was a determination, and a will to succeed. And I think that is what I fell back on in the early days. I was very lucky inside the team that the senior players and the players gave me a chance to grow and develop, and I think I was fortunate to go and get 2 double hundreds up front, which took a lot of pressure off me.
Helps, eh?
In the first 4 years, I polarized people, because the only thing I had, everywhere I went, people were taking me on. So you almost form this I'm going to show you type mentality. So when you're in front of the media or you're talking to people, that's kind of the attitude you're portraying, and maybe covering up a little bit of the vulnerability that you had inside. So I was fortunate in the first 4 years that I performed with a bat. But as a team, it was very much up and down as my leadership grew and South African cricket kind of grew as well.
I'm thinking back being 22, I didn't have enough bandwidth to keep myself on the field most games. I was sent off. I mean, I played 70 minutes pretty much for my first 3 seasons. So it's just incredible. I mean, to be captain on top of that. And when you're starting out a career, you want to make a success out of it. And there's a lot of pressure that goes, but you're also fearless. And obviously the 2 double hundreds you mentioned, Edgbaston, the one, was it? And Lords, not a bad record as a youngster to go. Youngest captain ever, Lords, beat Donald Bradman's record, 259, whatever it was, the highest foreigner score at Lords ever. But also, how do you manage, because there's senior players, and they've been around, for a long time, and all of them, they've got their specific way. Polly wants to bowl from this side. Were you aware of all of that, or was there a big corp of senior players around you helping?
Is it the naivety of a 22-year-old? Kind of just...
Probably a little bit of everything, but Scally, thanks, I appreciate it. your cricket, you've at least got some ball skills, John, doesn't have many, and you can play the game and appreciate it. But I think it was an element of all of that, maybe. But I think the one thing that I had is I've always had decent people skills, I think, and an ability to interact and talk and connect. I think the major stresses I would have is around the on-field stuff. Coaches and senior players would probably pick up elements off the field that I wasn't maybe quite attending to as a captain. And where captaincy in cricket is different is your captaincy is like your leader. You and the coach dovetail a lot in terms of when you're preparing, when you're playing, who leads, who takes over, how you drive conversation. Getting the best out of players often falls to the captain. And I think I was fortunate that, as you say, the senior group gave me a chance. I think scoring runs was key, but on the field, I remember Sean Pollock wasn't bowling well, and you think, well, I need to take him off here, but he's the #1 bowler in the world. He's our best bowler, So that trust in your decision making isn't there all the time, and that developed over time. You developed this to trust your tactical skills, and also having the confidence in your decision making. That's a huge thing. But I think the thing that saved me was that I scored runs, and I found a way to score runs and captain. But after 4 years, you need to find something more sustainable. You can't just keep taking on the world and trying to show everybody. You've got to grow and develop. And I think that I was fortunate that I actually had some of those hard conversations and growth times with myself, and that's why I was able to create the longevity.
Something that did happen in that after that series is Nasser Hussain had to step down.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously a recurring theme, unfortunately, that you started in 2002.
Yeah, well, fortunately for South Africa.
Yeah.
No,
he wasn't the first English
Nasser's
captain
quite an
ever.
abrasive character. I mean, I think the story's been shoved in his face a fair amount, but he.
Oh, we can do it one more time.
I'm
sure he'll be watching.
Going to the toss. I mean, he introduced me to the mascot as Greg, and then we won the toss and batted, and I unfortunately went on to get 270 yard. And I remember him in the field as almost being acutely aware of how like aggro he was in the field. Almost like at that point he had lost his team as a captain. Sometimes you see it. I'm sure you played against players where you felt, oh, something's not right here. And I felt that in that first game as we were out. And, when you have a team on the ropes, you see these things. When a team's on top, you don't notice these challenges that they have. And I definitely noticed that. And we had them on the ropes, and the game ended up being rained out. And, I was naive, 22, and Nasser resigns after the game. Where I was, it didn't really influence me because I hadn't played enough, I hadn't considered enough, I hadn't experienced enough to actually understand what he had gone through. In the next tour that we had in England, I think it was 2008, when Vaughan retired, because Vaughan is a great guy, he's got a great sense of humour. He was an excellent captain, he was really like sarcastic and played the game very well and smart. And we started our captaincy kind of together, because next test he took over after Nasser, and then we played against each other for a number of years. He built a great team in the early years. They won the Ashes in 2005. They were hugely successful. So when we beat them in 2008, like when he resigned, that I was a bit emotional about that. It was the first time that I considered, it's a tough world, and how hard it can be. And then Straussy on the last tour, I didn't mind getting one over the head boy, the private school boy from the UK. I mean, we had a few battles over the years, but it was nice to go back and win.